Tommy Heffernan, veterinary consultant here, and today on Concepts Worth Considering, I'm going to talk about being brilliant at the basics around calf rearing. I work across a lot of animal species now, but I suppose for me, calves were the first time I remember the actual investigation when I went from maybe treating the sick calves to trying to think about how we could prevent it on the farm. And it was a clumsy approach, lots and lots of diagnostics, and I wasn't sure exactly what my outcome was. But through persistence, I developed systems and checklists that I have found to be very beneficial. I was obsessed with the detail of diseases and the pathogens themselves, and probably overcomplicated it. What I have found is that going back to the basics and understanding those fundamentals is a real great foundation to investigate calf health disease. And it's been a good way for me to help with training as well around calf health, but I've expanded that out to other areas of animal health. But it's the essential checklist for me for calves is, these are the fundamentals I look at. So we'll look at colostrum, we'll look at feeding, really simple, hygiene, fresh air, calf comfort. And I look at space as well. I think it's a really important one. It's one I've learned on both, all animals. That's really key. So these are kind of the checklist that I will look at the basics. If we can get this right, this is being brilliant at the basics. Now the challenge with this is it may sound simple, and certainly on a light board it is, but it is not simple in practical terms. But each of these areas, if we think about colostrum, if I want to look at rearing healthy calves, if I want to, if you're looking at a disease issue, these are the fundamental areas you can look at. But also, if we're setting up to a good system for calf rearing, colostrum is really key. And we think about quality. We think about how colostrogenesis occurs inside and the udder, how we feed our cows to improve colostrum quality. Then it has to go in quickly, and that's all around systems on the farm. And of course, the quantity is really important. So I'm a believer in more colostrum. But colostrum is really key. The one area that I think that I've learned a lot about colostrum, and it fits into here, is hygiene. So particularly in dairy farms, how we harvest colostrum, how we store it, how we defrost it. And because it's got high fat and protein, it's a really key area to stop and avoid bacterial overgrowth when it comes to affecting the young calf and colostrum immunity and absorption. So colostrum's key. Everyone talks about that. The next thing I look at is feeding, and I'm a big fan of biological optimization. What the hell does that mean? Well, I won't even spell it because I'll probably get it wrong, but biological optimization is kind of understanding the needs of the calf from a biological perspective. What can the calf actually drink? How many times a day does it suckle? And then looking at the farm system and how close to that can we get. I have to say I have become an increased fan of more milk. For a number of reasons, because of epigenetics and the role that has on future lifetime performance, but particularly where we see disease challenges. I've seen calves that are on more milk, particularly scour and even cryptosporidium, that they seem to have more resilience to overcome it with, when they're on higher feeds and planes of nutrition. When it comes to feeding, I think it all feeds back into hygiene, consistency, routine. The quality of milk replacer is really important. So we look at, animal proteins being high, crude protein, but the quality of those ingredients is key. I'm a huge advocate for dairy. I have 5 kids and I promote dairy because I think I can't think they get enough dairy into the young children because of the amino acid profile, because of the quality of the proteins in it. So if we look at young calves, they're a bit like monogastrics. They are monogastrics. They require the same nutrition for the growing muscles and their immune system. So we don't want to be giving plant proteins to calves when they need actual animal proteins. It's a simple thing, but it's a really important one. Feeding consistency around routine. When we're looking at automatic milk feeders, as well, looking at the position of them, making sure that they're mixing and the concentration is correct. And wash routines, I would say, it kind of feeds back into hygiene in automated feeders is really important. We're using the correct detergents. So colostrum and feeding, trying to get as much colostrum in as possible of high quality. More milk and consistency around routine, they're the two key steps that I would look at. Hygiene is a huge one, particularly in seasonal calving systems, because when we look at, and I talked about this in the last concept worth considering, is this is supposed to be a seesaw. This is very bad seesaw. We're looking at two things. When we look at infectious diseases, we're looking at pathogens, and on the other side, we're looking at immunity. So we're always trying to balance that immunity and infection pressure piece. So we're trying to drive up immunity, colostrum, feeding, all those sort of things. And we're trying to drive down infection pressure. So that's the amount of bacteria or viruses or pathogens animals are exposed to. So hygiene is key here, particularly when we have large numbers of calves. And hygiene is around systems. How can we keep it as clean as possible? So even if we think about straw, lots of straw in our calving pens, because that means that there's less infection pressure, cleaner udders when we're harvesting milk, simple things like that. When we look at utensils, particularly feeding equipment, what's your cleaning routine on farm and how can we make that easy? So in a busy farm, it has to be made as simple as possible. Have we an area we can bring utensils to, wash them down with cold water, leave maybe the high priority instruments like stomach tubes and stuff that soaking in a water and disinfectant solution. But hygiene is really key, I continuously, when you look at actually hygiene on farm, it is a challenge because of the type of environment, but how can you make it as simple as possible? And that's something I will focus very heavily on the checklist and routine, and it's a subject all on its own for concepts worth considering in the future. The next thing I look at for calves is fresh air. A really simple one as well, but a really hard one to get right. And why is it hard to get right? Well, if we look at the critical temperature the calves like to be at, it's about 10, probably 15 degrees. When we go below that, that can be a real challenge metabolically for calves. So we also want fresh air and plenty air movements down at calf level. Calves spend 85% of their day lying down, so that creates a great challenge. So what do we need to do to increase fresh air? Well, more open sheds, we can put positive pressure ventilation in, and that all massively helps because fresh air keeps bedding dry. It actually has a thing called ozone in it. It helps kill viral pathogens and airborne pathogens, but it also makes calves very cold. So fresh air is a really individual shed by shed analysis. We can look at air movements, but we need to get those air movements down at calf level. But we have to then look at, well, if it's very cold, will we be causing problems? So the way I've got over fresh air is more open sheds with calf jackets and higher planes of milk feeding, or looking at sort of positive pressure ventilation systems with calf jackets. But again, it's a very individual farm by farm. I don't have the answer on this light board today, but it is always something I'll consider. And the best tool I find for analysis fresh air is this thing between my eyes, my nose. So if we're smelling that ammonia, that's a challenge. And if you see a lot, or ammonia, that's a lot of challenge. If we're seeing a lot of pneumonia, fresh air is something I'll always work hard to get right. Calf comfort, a really important one. So NB. So this is again about biological and behavior optimization. So the more we look after the calf, the more they're going to perform, future lifetime performance, better health, less interventions. So what do the calves want? Well, they need a warm, dry lie. They need fresh air. Good bedding. So straw is one of my favorite tools. Plenty straw, depending on its availability. It's a fantastic tool because it creates insulation. We want calves to nest in it. And calf comfort is really, really key. I think my extension onto that is kind of behavioral optimization, understanding the behaviors of the calves, that they're smart creatures, that they learn from each other, they're social creatures. So the more we can do that, the healthier calves will be. And what we're trying to do really is minimize down stress. So all of this will reduce stress. And stress, again, from my own opinion, is a massive factor in disease. And finally, a really big one, and I think this goes across all animal species, especially when we're indoors, is space. For a number of reasons, because lying space is important, disease and infection pressure. If we want to reduce down the amount of pressure, we can give animals more space. It costs money, but I think it's a really important one. More floor space often leads to more air space as well, and if we think about the spread of disease, it makes a lot of sense. So if I was to pick the key things that I'll always look for, and I've done a lot of traveling as well, and I've been very lucky to look at different systems, and I'm always saying, what's the magic solution that's going on in this farm that's leading to success around calf rearing? What's the thing I've been missing? And I've discovered that it is the attention to detail here in these types of areas. Really good on colostrum, focused on feeding the cows to have quality colostrum, getting it in quickly and in a really clean manner with the challenges of it being a farm. More milk feeding, a real attention to detail around hygiene and setting up systems to clean utensils regularly, and that could be daily. Good fresh air movement and a focus on calf comfort and space. So more milk and more straw often can solve a lot of problems on farm, as simple as it sounds. Then when we look at calf rearing, I'm obviously involved in the space of tools to help us. And why do we need tools? Well, ultimately, in the type of systems we have, there's always going to be challenges. So Precision Microbes is a liquid pro and postbiotic gut health solution. And for me, of all the tools I've worked with, as a tool on top of getting the basics right, it's really, really delivering. Again, vaccines are something that we use on farm that have huge benefit because they're stimulating that immune system, and you know, again, with infection pressure there, all these tools on top of this. But this is what I'll always say about calf rearing, that it's the basics must be right. And this is a hard thing to do. So when the basics are hard, what can we do? And a concept I like is a Japanese one called Kaizen. Who doesn't like a little bit of Japanese philosophy? It's about this gradual improvement over time. So we're not going to solve all our problems in one season or 1 year, but if we can pick areas that need improving, that are within our control, and improve them, well then progress beats perfection every time. So what I work with on with farms in my training is kind of understanding where can we move things forward. We're not all going to build new calf sheds, you know, but we can make improvements. And where is the area that will see the most benefit in the short term, but also think long term as well. So that's the way I approach calf health. It's an ever-moving feast with lots of challenges, but after years of thinking about calf health, this is the ultimate checklist, the 6 fundamentals of calf rearing. When it comes to tools, they're valuable and they have to deliver results, and that's what I've seen with Precision Microbes time and time again. As a tool on top of the basics, it really, really delivers. It's focused on digestive health, improving gut health, improves immunity and competition with harmful bacteria. As a long-term solution for calves during this rearing period, it really delivers. Again, working with your own vet, looking at vaccines and strategies that can add and add benefit to the basics of calf rearing. So concepts worth considering today: the Ascension Checklist for calf health, colostrum feeding, hygiene, fresh air, calf comfort, and again, I think this more and more across all animal species, space per animal indoors is huge.